A black teenager named Malik is falsely accused of theft and dragged into a courtroom where Judge Harrington, known for her cruel laughter and bias, mocks him at every turn. His mother, Angela, fights desperately for his voice to be heard but is silenced, humiliated, and even removed from the court. Just when hope begins to fade, a shocking twist erupts. Camille, the judge's own estranged daughter, steps forward to expose years of corruption, prejudice, and injustice committed under her mother's gavel. With evidence of fabricated testimony and altered surveillance footage, Camille risks everything to reveal the truth. As protests grow outside and the media swarms, the powerful judge falls from grace, stripped of authority and honor. Malik's innocence is finally recognized, Angela's prayers are answered, and Camille finds redemption by breaking free from her mother's shadow. What began with racist laughter ends with silence, disgrace, and poetic justice echoing through the city, forever changing the meaning of truth in a broken system. Malik's sneakers slapped against the cracked sidewalk, echoing in the cool night air. The dim streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that made the neighborhood feel emptier than it was. A basketball dangled from his right hand, bouncing lightly against his thigh as he walked. He'd just finished practice. His coach's words still rang in his ears. "Keep working, Malik. You've got talent. Don't let the noise outside kill your shot." Malik smiled faintly, wiping sweat from his forehead. For a moment, life felt simple. Then the sirens flashed. "Hey, you there!" A harsh voice cut through the silence. Malik turned. Two white police officers stepped out of a patrol car. Their boots hit the pavement with the authority of men who expected obedience. "Hands where we can see him," one barked. Malik froze, confused. "You are, sir. I didn't do anything. I'm just heading home." The taller officer narrowed his eyes. "Don't get smart. We got a call about a stolen phone. Matches your description." "My description?" Malik's voice cracked. "I've been at practice all evening. You can call my coach." The second officer snorted. "Yeah, sure. And I'm the mayor. Empty your pockets." Malik shifted the ball to his other hand, slowly raising both palms. "I don't even have a phone like that." Before he could finish, the tall officer shoved him against the hood of the cruiser. The basketball rolled away, bouncing into the gutter. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." Malik gasped, cheek pressed to the cold metal. "Please, this is a mistake." The second officer dug through his backpack, tossing notebooks and a pair of sneakers onto the ground. "Nothing here." The tall one smirked. "Probably ditched it." Malik struggled to keep his voice steady. "Check the cameras at the gym. My coach he'll vouch for me." The officer laughed. "You think we got time to play detective for you?" Malik's chest heaved. His words fell into the night like stones sinking into water. No echo, no answer. A neighbor stepped onto her porch across the street. She watched, clutching her robe tight, but said nothing. "Cuff him," the tall officer ordered. Cold metal snapped around Malik's wrists. The basketball, his last trace of normalcy, sat abandoned in the gutter. "Please," Malik whispered. His voice cracked again, softer this time. "I didn't steal anything." The shorter officer leaned close, sneering. "Then you won't mind explaining it to the judge. Maybe she'll find your story funny." The words stung. Malik felt heat rising in his face, not from guilt, but from humiliation. That as they shoved him into the back seat, he caught the neighbor's eyes again. She turned away, shutting her door. The cruiser pulled off, red and blue lights splashing across the street. Inside, Malik stared at his cuffed hands. His knuckles were scraped raw from the shove. His chest tightened, but he forced his head up, whispering to himself, "They can't laugh forever." The officers' voices drifted from the front seat. "Another one off the street," the tall one said, chuckling. "Judge Harrington's gonna eat this up." The other replied, and Malik's stomach dropped. Tomorrow, he would stand before someone who already found his existence laughable. Angela Johnson stood at the front desk of the precinct, her fists pressed against the counter. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, washing her tired face in pale light. "My son is 17, she said firmly. Her voice shook, but she forced it steady. "He was at basketball practice. You have no right to hold him." The officer behind the glass partition didn't even look up. He clicked at his keyboard, chewing gum with his mouth wide open. "Ma'am, if your boy got himself arrested, that's on him. Sit down and wait." Angela leaned closer to the glass. "Arrested for what? He doesn't even own the kind of phone you're talking about. He's a child." The officer finally looked at her, his eyes dull with boredom. "Ma'am, you keep raising your voice, and I'll have you escorted out." Angela's throat tightened. She swallowed the scream building inside her. Escorted out. She repeated softly, "You've already taken my son. Now you want to take my voice, too." A second officer walked by, chuckling. "Lady, welcome to the system. You'll get your little court date. Till then, sit." Angela's knees weakened, but she didn't sit. Inside the holding cell, Malik sat on a bench, staring at the floor. The bars cast shadows across his face like a cage of stripes. His lips moved silently, replaying the scene on the street over and over. The door clanged open. "Visitor." Angela stepped in, clutching her purse like a shield. Her eyes found Malik immediately. "Baby," she whispered, rushing forward. She reached through the bars, her fingers trembling. "Mom," Malik said, his throat raw. "They think I stole a phone. I swear, I know." Her hand pressed against his cheek. "I know you didn't." Malik's eyes watered. "They didn't care when I told them. They just," his voice cracked, dropping to a whisper. "They laughed." Angela closed her eyes, steadying herself. "You listen to me. You hold your head up tomorrow in that courtroom. You tell your truth, no matter who's listening." "They're not listening, Mom. Nobody listens." Angela's grip tightened. "Then make them, even if your voice shakes, even if they laugh. You speak." The guard cleared his throat. "Time's up." Angela ignored him. She leaned closer, her words sharp. "Don't you ever forget who you are, Malik Johnson. You're mine. You're a fighter. This," she gestured around the cell, at the guards, at the bars, "this does not define you." Malik nodded, swallowing hard. His shoulders straightened, just a little. The guard tapped his baton. "I said, time's up." Angela kissed her son's forehead through the bars before stepping back. Later that night, Angela sat across from a weary public defender in a cluttered office. The man flipped through papers without looking at her. "Your son's got no prior record. That's good," he muttered. "Good." Angela's eyes widened. "He didn't do anything. Why are we even talking about records?" The lawyer sighed. "Mrs. Johnson, the system doesn't care about innocence. It cares about evidence. And right now, the officer's word is evidence." Angela leaned forward. "Then bring the coach. Bring the teammates. They'll tell you he was at practice." The lawyer rubbed his temples. "Slow down. Look, I'll try. But the judge, well, she's got a reputation." Angela narrowed her eyes. "What reputation?" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "Judge Harrington doesn't take kindly to boys like your son. She thinks they all end up the same." Angela's stomach twisted. "Boys like my son," she repeated, her voice trembling with rage. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Don't shoot the messenger. Just be prepared." Angela stood abruptly. Her chair screeched against the floor. "Prepared for what? For my son to be mocked? For him to be railroaded into something he didn't do?" The lawyer avoided her eyes. "Prepared for reality, Mrs. Johnson." Angela's hands shook, but her voice grew calm to calm. "Reality is my son's life. Reality is him being 17, walking home from practice, and being treated like a criminal." She gathered her purse. "And I'll be damned if I let that woman laugh at my baby the way those cops did." The lawyer opened his mouth, then shut it again. Angela was already out the door. That night, Malik sat alone on the hard cot. The air smelled of bleach and rust. He whispered into the silence, as though his mother's words were still echoing in the room. "You hold your head up. You speak." But, in the pit of his stomach, fear gnawed because tomorrow, his voice would not just be tested, it would be mocked. And he wasn't sure how much more humiliation his heart could take. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. Sunlight cut through tall windows, throwing pale squares across the benches where people whispered, waiting for the show to begin. For them, it was entertainment. For Malik Johnson, it was Judgment Day. He shuffled in, wearing an oversized orange jumpsuit, wrists chained at his sides. His head hung low, but the weight he carried wasn't just the shackles, it was the eyes. Every eye in that room tracked him, labeling him before a word was spoken. Angela sat in the front row, gripping the bench so tightly her knuckles whitened. The bailiff barked, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrington." The room rose. A woman in her 60s entered, robes flowing, chin lifted like she owned not just the courtroom but every soul inside it. Judge Harrington sat, eyes landing on Malik, with a flicker of disdain she didn't bother to hide. "Let's begin." The prosecutor, a slick man in a gray suit, adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, the defendant Malik Johnson was apprehended by officers. Last night, after matching the description of a thief who stole a smartphone from a passerby, the officers found him loitering, unable to account for his time. A classic case of urban delinquency. Malik's jaw clenched. He wanted to shout, "I wasn't loitering, I was walking home," but he stayed quiet, his mother's voice in his head. "Speak when it's time." Judge Harrington arched an eyebrow. "And the defendant's record? Clean. For now," the prosecutor said with a smirk. "But, as we all know, this is how it starts." The gallery chuckled softly. Angela shot to her feet. "That's a child you're talking about." The judge banged her gavel. "Sit down, ma'am, or I'll have you removed." Angela sat, trembling, her lips pressed tight to keep from screaming. The public defender finally rose, his voice timid. "Your Honor, my client was at basketball practice. He has witnesses." Judge Harrington cut him off. "Do you have those witnesses present in this courtroom?" The lawyer stammered. Not today, Your Honor, but I can then sit down," Harrington snapped. "We deal in facts, not excuses." Malik's chest burned. He stood suddenly, his voice cracking but clear. "Your Honor, please, I swear I didn't steal anything. I was at practice until 9. You can check the gym cameras. My coach." The judge's gavel slammed. "Sit down, boy. I'm telling the truth," Malik pleaded. "I don't even own that kind of phone." The room erupted in murmurs. Harrington leaned forward, eyes glinting. "If you want to be heard in my courtroom, you'll speak proper English. None of this street talk." The words sliced deeper than the cuffs ever had. Malik froze, his throat closing. "Street talk," he whispered. The judge smirked. "Yes. Try to sound like someone respectable, not like what you are." The gallery laughed low, cruel, scattered chuckles that rippled like poison. Angela rose again, tears streaking her face. "How dare you? He is respectable. He's my son, and you will not remove her," the judge ordered coldly. 2 bailiffs moved toward Angela, but Malik shouted, "No, leave her." The gavel struck again. Silence. The prosecutor leaned in, savoring the moment. "Your Honor, I think the defendant's outburst speaks volumes. He's combative, disrespectful." "I'm not disrespectful." Malik's voice cracked, desperate. "I'm scared, and none of you care." The laughter rose again. People weren't hearing his words, they were feeding on his pain. Judge Harrington chuckled lightly, resting her chin on her hand. "Scared? Perhaps you should have thought about that before stealing." "I didn't steal," Malik shouted. His voice echoed, but it was drowned by more whispers, more smirks, more silence from those who could have defended him. His public defender tugged at his sleeve. "Sit down, Malik," he whispered urgently. "Please." Malik collapsed back into his seat, tears stinging his eyes. His mother's muffled sobs filled the room. For a brief moment, silence hung heavy. The judge tapped her pen against the bench, lips curled into a faint smile. "We'll reconvene tomorrow for testimony. Until then, the defendant will remain in custody." The gavel struck. The gallery began to file out, buzzing with chatter, as though they'd just watched a performance. Malik sat frozen, his body trembling. He felt stripped, naked, humiliated beyond words. The laughter still rang in his ears, louder than the gavel, louder than his own heartbeat. Angela pressed her hand to the glass wall, separating them as bailiffs led him away. Her voice cracked through her tears. "Baby, don't let them break you." Malik looked back, lips barely moving. "They already did." The courtroom emptied slowly, conversations buzzing like flies around a wound. Reporters scribbled notes, officers laughed among themselves, and spectators filed out with the smug satisfaction of people who'd just seen a show. But one person didn't leave right away. Camille sat in the back row, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She hadn't spoken once, hadn't moved much either, but her eye-sharp unflinching never left Malik. When the bailiffs dragged him past, she leaned forward just slightly, her gaze locked on his face. He didn't notice his head hung too low, his spirit too bruised, but she noticed him. Every detail. Angela brushed past, tears streaking her cheeks. She stopped briefly near Camille, muttering to herself. "They think our pain is a joke," Camille whispered, almost inaudibly. "It's not a joke." Angela froze, startled. She glanced at the young woman, early 20s, with dark curls framing her face, dressed simply in jeans and a cardigan. There was something calm, almost deliberate, about her presence. Angela blinked. "Do I know you?" Camille gave a faint, unreadable smile. "Not yet." Before Angela could respond, a bailiff barked, "Move it along, ma'am." Angela hurried out. Camille stood too, but instead of following the crowd, She lingered at the edge of the aisle. Her eyes flicked to the judge's bench where Harrington still sat, scribbling notes and speaking with the prosecutor. Her jaw tightened. Outside, Angela paced the steps of the courthouse, her phone pressed to her ear. "Coach, please, you have to come tomorrow. They're twisting everything, please." Her voice trembled, but she forced strength into it. "If you don't, they'll bury him alive." Camille lingered at the bottom of the stairs, half-shadowed. She didn't interrupt, but she listened. Every word sharpened her resolve. When Angela hung up, Camille finally spoke. "He's innocent." Angela startled again. "You followed me." Camille shook her head. "No, I was already here." Angela studied her carefully. "Who are you?" Camille hesitated, then said softly, "Someone who knows what it feels like to be silenced in that room." Angela's eyes narrowed. "You were watching my boy." Why? Camille's lips pressed together. For a moment, it seemed she might confess, but then she glanced back at the courthouse, where Judge Harrington was stepping outside, laughing with the prosecutor as though nothing had happened. Camille's face hardened. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said simply, turning to leave. Angela called after her. "Wait, are you a reporter? A lawyer?" Camille paused, then looked over her shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, I'm someone the judge knows very well." Then she disappeared into the crowd. Back in the holding cell, Malik sat on the bench, head in his hands. The echoes of laughter still rattled inside him. His cellmate, an older man with tired eyes, spoke quietly. "Kid, you gotta keep your chin up." Malik looked at him, hollow. "They already think I'm guilty. Doesn't matter what I say." The man leaned back against the wall. "Don't matter what they think. Matters what the truth is. And the truth's got a way of slipping out, even when folks try to bury it." Malik shook his head. "Not in that courtroom." The man chuckled, though it was a weary sound. "You'd be surprised who's watching." Malik frowned. "Watching, but..." The man closed his eyes, ending the conversation. Malik sat in silence, unaware that across town, Camille was sitting at a desk under a single lamp, pulling out folders stuffed with papers, evidence she'd been gathering for months, and every sheet had one name at the top: Judge Eleanor Harrington. The second day in court felt heavier, darker. Malik shuffled in, wrists chained, the orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his thin frame. His mother caught his eyes from the front row and mouthed, "Strong." He nodded faintly, though his chest ached with dread. Judge Harrington entered, her gavel striking. "Let's proceed." The prosecutor stood tall. "Your Honor, the defendant continues to deny responsibility for the stolen phone. But denial doesn't erase guilt. We have sworn officer testimony." One of the arresting officers took the stand. He puffed out his chest as if the badge gave him wings. "Tell us what happened," the prosecutor urged. The officer smirked. "We spotted the suspect loitering. He matched the caller's description: black hoodie, basketball, nervous behavior. When questioned, he became aggressive." "That's a lie." Malik shot up from his chair. "I wasn't aggressive. You shoved me first." The gavel slammed. "Sit down," Harrington barked. "You'll speak when spoken to." Laughter rippled through the gallery. Angela clutched the bench, whispering through clenched teeth, "Hold on, baby, hold on." The prosecutor nodded solemnly. "Thank you, officer. No further questions." The public defender rose awkwardly. "Officer, did you find the phone on Malik's person?" "No." "Did you find it in his backpack?" "No." "Then," the judge cut him off with a wave. "Pointless. Move on." The lawyer sank back into his seat, defeated. Malik stood again, voice shaking. "Your Honor, please. I was at practice. My coach can." The judge leaned forward, eyes cold. "I told you yesterday, speak proper English in this courtroom." Malik's heart dropped. "I am speaking proper English." The judge chuckled. "You call that proper? You sound like a thug on the corner." The laughter grew louder this time, feeding on Malik's humiliation. Tears burned his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. "I'm not a thug. I'm a student. I've never..." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. If you were half as good a student as you claim, you'd know how to show respect." The prosecutor smirked. "Perhaps he's learned his respect from the streets." The gallery chuckled again. "Cruel and careless." Angela leaped up. "Stop it. You can't just turn my son's life into a joke." "Remove her," Harrington ordered flatly. Two bailiffs approached, but Angela planted her feet. "No. You listen. He is innocent. He is 17. You contempt of court," the judge thundered. "One more word and I'll have her jailed." Angela's voice broke. "Then jail me. But I will not stay silent while you laugh at my boy." Gasps swept the room, Harrington's face tightened. Bailiffs, sit her down. They forced Angela back onto the bench. She wept openly now, hands shaking. Malik's voice cracked. Stop dragging my mom, please, please just listen to me. Judge Harrington leaned back, smirking. Oh, I'm listening. I just don't hear anything worth believing. The words crushed him more than the cuffs ever could. The courtroom buzzed against knickers, whispers, notes scribbled by reporters. To them, it was spectacle. To Malik, it was the slow unraveling of his dignity. At the back of the room, Camille sat quietly, watching. She didn't move, didn't speak, but her eyes never left Harrington. Her fingers tapped rhythmically against her notebook, as though keeping time with the judge's cruelty. Her lips pressed together. She was waiting for her moment. The judge rapped her gavel. Enough delays. We'll continue tomorrow. Unless, of course, the defendant prefers to confess and spare us the circus. Her voice dripped with mockery. Malik lifted his head, eyes red but burning with defiance. I will never confess to something I didn't do. For the first time, the laughter died down slightly. There was something in his tone, a crack of steel in the middle of his breaking voice. But Harrington only smiled thinly. Then prepare yourself, boy, because tomorrow you'll learn what justice really looks like. The gavel struck. The bailiffs led Malik away, his mother sobbing behind him. He kept his head high this time, though every step felt heavier than the last. The laughter had wounded him. The mockery had broken something inside, but somewhere deep beneath the hurt, a seed of anger began to grow, and in the back row, Camille stood quietly, eyes blazing. Tomorrow, she would no longer remain silent. The courtroom felt colder on the third morning. Malik shuffled in, chains rattling at his wrists. But today his eyes carried something different, anger, simmering beneath the fear. Angela sat in the front row. Her hands clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. She'd spent the night pacing the floor, praying, rehearsing words she knew she wasn't allowed to speak. The bailiff called order. Judge Harrington strode in, robes flowing, a thin smile curling her lips as though she relished the power. Let's continue, she said, voice crisp. The prosecutor rose. Your Honor, we've heard from the officers. Their testimony is clear. The defendant refuses to take responsibility. I believe it's time to consider a plea bargain. Angela frowned. A plea, the public defender stammered, flipping through his notes. Your Honor, if I may, my client maintains his innocence. We should. Harrington cut him off. Does he intend to testify again? Because yesterday was, well, less than convincing. The gallery chuckled softly. Malik's chest tightened. He stood slowly. Your Honor, Angela's voice burst out before he could finish. No, enough. Gasps filled the room. Angela shot to her feet, her voice trembling but fierce. You've mocked my son from the moment he walked in here. You cut him off. You laughed at him. You twisted his words. Sit down, ma'am, Harrington barked. Gavel slamming. You are out of order. Angela's voice rose higher. No, you're out of order. This isn't justice, it's a show. You've already decided he's guilty because of the color of his skin. The gallery erupted in whispers. Some eyes widened, some smirked, others shifted uncomfortably. Reluff's Harrington snapped. Remove her immediately. Two men moved toward Angela, but she didn't back down. My son was at practice. His coach can prove it. You don't care because it doesn't fit the story you want to tell. You don't want truth, you want a headline. The prosecutor hissed. Control her, Your Honor. Angela turned on him, tears glistening. Control me. You've controlled everything. My son's life, his voice, even his innocence. But you will not control my love for him. The bailiffs grabbed her arms. She struggled, still shouting, her voice breaking with every word. He's a child. You hear me? A child. And you're tearing him apart. Malik's throat burned. Mom, please. But Angela refused to stop. No, Malik. They need to hear it. Don't you dare lower your head. Don't let them shame you into silence. The judge slammed her gavel again and again. Contempt. Contempt of court. Angela's voice cracked as the bailiffs dragged her toward the doors. Speak your truth, baby. Even if they hate it, speak. The doors slammed behind her. The echo lingered in the courtroom, louder than the gavel, louder than the whispers. Silence fell heavy. Malik stood frozen, fists trembling at his sides. His mother's cries still rang in his ears. He swallowed hard, forcing words past the lump in his throat. You can throw her out, he whispered, his voice shaking. But you can't erase what she said. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. Excuse me, Malik's voice rose. You can laugh at me. You can call me names. But, you heard her. I didn't steal anything, and no matter what you try to make people believe, I know my truth. The judge's lips curled into a sneer. Bold words from a boy in chains. The laughter bubbled again in the gallery. Malik's chest heaved, but he didn't sit. Chains don't change the truth. For the first time, a faint murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Uncertain, but real. Harrington's gavel struck sharply. That's enough. We will reassess until this afternoon. The courtroom erupted again as Malik was led away, his mother's defiant cries still echoing in his mind, and in the back row, Camille's hand tightened around her notebook. The time for silence was almost over. The courtroom buzzed like a hive when the session reconvened that afternoon. Reporters filled the benches, cameras hovered at the edge of the room, and the gallery whispered about Angela's dramatic outburst. Judge Harrington entered with sharper steps than usual, her face tight, her gavel slamming harder. Let's restore order, she barked. This is not a circus. But the air was already electric. People came for spectacle, and spectacle was what they expected. Malik sat straighter, this time, his mother's words still echoing in his chest. Don't you dare lower your head. The prosecutor cleared his throat. Your Honor, at this point, the state has made its case. The defendant offers no credible alibi. I suggest we move toward formal charges. Harrington nodded, already forming the words, when a voice rose from the back. Objection. The single word cut through the room like a blade. Heads turned. Camille stood, notebook in hand, her voice steady. I have information that must be heard. The judge's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Sit down immediately. Camille didn't move. My name is Camille Harrington, and you know exactly who I am. Gasps shot through the gallery. The prosecutor's face paled. Reporters leaned forward, pens scratching furiously. Malik blinked, confused. Harrington. The judge's lips thinned. Camille. This is neither the time nor the place. Camille's gaze sharpened. On the contrary, it's exactly the time, and exactly the place. Because this courtroom has silenced voices for far too long. The gallery stirred, whispers rising. Is she related to the judge? What's going on? Harrington slammed her gavel. Bailiff escort her out. But Camille's voice rose louder, stronger. Touch me, and you'll be confirming everything I'm about to say. The bailiff froze, uncertain. The room's attention was hers now. Camille stepped forward. This young man, Malik Johnson's, not the first to be humiliated in this courtroom. I've watched case after case where my mother, Judge Harrington, belittled and crushed black defendants while protecting officers and prosecutors who lied. The room exploded with gasps. Angela, who had slipped back into the gallery after recess, covered her mouth, eyes wide. Malik stared, stunned, shackles heavy at his wrists. Lies, the judge spat, her voice cracking for the first time. Baseless lies. No, Camille said firmly. Evidence. She held up her notebook, stuffed with printed records and photographs. Years of rulings, patterns no one wanted to see. Defendants denied testimony. Public defenders silenced. Officers' words treated as gospel, while young black men were laughed at, mocked, jailed. She flipped a page, her voice steady as a blade. Case 1 for B72, Marcus Lee. You told him his English was too sloppy to be trusted. He spent 2 years inside before the real thief was caught. The gallery erupted again. Shocked murmurs, furious whispers. Case 17C94, Camille continued, louder now. Devin Harris, arrested for trespassing in his own apartment building. You laughed at his mother when she tried to speak. You called it emotional theatrics. He lost his scholarship. Malik's chest heaved. He wasn't alone. He had never been alone. Harrington's face blanched. She banged the gavel again and again. This is slander. Get her out. But Camille pressed forward, her voice shaking with fury. No, mother, this is truth. I sat at our dinner table while you mocked these families. I listened as you called them predictable and hopeless. I stayed silent too long, but not today. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked. Angela stood, tears streaming. Lord, thank you, she whispered. Malik stared at Camille, disbelief mixing with awe. The prosecutor tried to intervene. This is irrelevant testimony. Camille turned on him like fire. Irrelevant. This entire courtroom is built on relevance, on whose words matter. And for once, it won't be the lies of officers or the bias of a judge. It will be the truth. She looked back at the judge, her voice breaking but resolute. You laughed at Malik, just like you laughed at all the others. But today, your laughter ends. The room erupted into chaos. Some spectators clapped. Others shouted. Reporters rushed to the phones at the back. Harrington's gavel thundered. Order. I demand order. But her voice was drowned out by the surge of noise. For the first time, the judge's authority cracked not by defiance alone, but by exposure. Malik rose slowly, eyes locked on Camille. His voice was soft but clear. Why are you doing this? For me. Camille looked at him, her expression heavy with regret. Because silence makes me complicit, and I won't be complicit anymore. The bailiffs hovered uncertainly. The prosecutor tried to shout down the chaos, but it was too late. The tide had turned. Camille closed her notebook and laid it on the evidence table. I'll submit this formally, and the public will see everything, every ruling, every name. She turned back to her mother, eyes cold. You once told me, justice means protecting what's right. I finally believe you. Which is why I'm standing against you. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Harrington's face was stone, but her eyes betrayed fear. Malik exhaled shakily, the weight on his chest lifting for the first time since the night of his arrest. And in that silence, the balance of power shifted. The next morning, the courthouse steps were unrecognizable. Cameras swarmed like bees. Microphones waved in the air. Reporters shouted over each other. Headlines already screamed across the city. Judge exposed by own daughter. Angela stood outside with Malik, holding his hand tightly. He wasn't free yet. The cuffs still bruised his wrists, but the world finally seemed to be listening. Inside, Judge Harrington walked into her chambers under a hail of camera flashes. Gone was the confident smirk. Her face was pale, lips pressed, thin eyes darting. The prosecutor tried to whisper reassurance. This will blow over. We'll spin it as spin it, Harrington snapped, her voice shaking. She's my daughter. She knows everything. They'll dig through every case, every word. From the corner, Camille's voice cut in. They won't need to dig. I've already given them the files. Harrington's head jerked up. Camille stood in the doorway, reporters just behind her. You, Harrington hissed. You've destroyed me. Camille's jaw tightened. No, you destroyed yourself. I just turned on the lights. The reporters surged forward, questions flying. Judge Harrington, did you mock defendants off record? Do you deny calling families predictable? Will you resign? Harrington's gavel wasn't here to save her. Her voice cracked. No comment. No comment. But Camille spoke louder, her voice clear. Every story I shared is documented. Every case file is public record. The people deserve to know how justice was twisted in this room. Angela squeezed Malik's hand. She's brave, she whispered. Malik's throat tightened. She's saving me. That afternoon, the courtroom filled again, but the air was different. Reporters lined every bench. Activists held up signs outside. Justice for Malik. Justice for Marcus. Justice for Devon. The bailiff announced the judge. Harrington walked in, robe flowing, but her authority was paper-thin. The gallery murmured, eyes sharp, phones raised. She sat stiffly. This hearing will continue. But Camille stood at the Bachna, mother. This hearing ends today. The prosecutor bristled. She can't interrupt proceedings. Camille strode forward, placing a thick folder on the desk. This is a formal complaint to the State Judicial Board, filed with supporting evidence of misconduct, effective immediately. Judge Harrington is under review. Gasps rippled. Reporters scribbled. Angela clapped a hand to her mouth. Malik whispered, "It's over." Harrington's face flushed crimson. "You dare." Camille's voice shook, but she didn't back down. "Yes, I dare. Because you laughed at children who begged for fairness. You crushed families who couldn't fight back. And I will not let you destroy another life." Her voice cracked, tears threatening, but the words landed like thunder. "You laughed at Malik, but the world isn't laughing with you anymore." The courtroom erupted, cheers from some, furious shouts from others. The prosecutor scrambled. "Your Honor," but the bailiff interrupted, uncertain. I've just received notice. You've been ordered to step down pending investigation." The gavel slipped from Harrington's hand, clattering against the desk. For the first time, she looked small. The gallery roared, phones flashed, voices rose, reporters pushed forward. Angela cried openly, gripping Malik as if to anchor him. Malik's voice was low, steady. "Chains don't change the truth." Camille's eyes met his. "And truth doesn't stay buried." The bailiffs escorted Harrington out, not with dignity, but under the glare of cameras, her robe trailing like a shroud. The prosecutor muttered curses, but no one listened. For once, the courtroom belonged not to the powerful, but to the people, who had been silenced. Later, outside the courthouse, Angela pulled Camille into a trembling embrace. "You saved my boy," she whispered. Camille shook her head. "No, Malik saved himself. I just stopped being a coward." Malik stepped forward, his voice soft. "You stood up when no one else would. That means something." Tears slid down Camille's cheeks. "I should have done it sooner." Angela's hand touched her arm. "But you did it now, and that's what matters." The cameras kept rolling, capturing every word, every tear, every trembling smile. And for the first time, Malik stood unbowed. His chains no longer heavy, not because they were gone, but because the truth had cut deeper than any shackle. The world was watching. And Judge Harrington had finally fallen. The courthouse buzzed louder than ever the next morning. Protesters held signs outside, "Free Malik," "End biased courts," "No justice, no peace." Reporters filled the steps. Cameras pointed at the doors like weapons. Inside, Malik sat at the defense table, wrists still cuffed, but head held high. Angela sat just behind him, her eyes raw from tears yet shining with pride. Camille was there too, a silent shield, her notebook resting in her lap. The air shifted when a new judge walked in, a stern black woman with silver streaks in her hair. "Court is now in session," the bailiff called. The prosecutor rose, voice strained. "Your Honor, given the distractions of yesterday, I move to postpone this trial." The new judge fixed him with a stare sharp enough to cut the night. "This community has waited long enough." He shifted uncomfortably. "But the evidence." Camille stood suddenly, holding up a folder. "The evidence was fabricated." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge arched a brow. "Explain." Camille's voice rang steady. "The surveillance footage used to identify Malik was altered. The timestamp doesn't match police records. I obtained the original file from the store owner this morning. Malik wasn't even there." Whispers surged. Reporters scrambled for notes. Angela's hand shot to her mouth. The prosecutor sputtered. That's inadmissible." "Without quiet," the judge snapped. Camille stepped forward, placing the flash drive on the table. "Check it. The truth is right there." The clerk loaded the footage. The screen flickered to life. There it was, the convenience store. The figure who had been presented as Malik was taller, bulkier. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m. Malik had been at basketball practice until 9. The gallery gasped. Angela sobbed. Malik's chest heaved, relief flooding his body. The judge turned to the prosecutor, her tone icy. "Explain why altered evidence was presented to this court." He stammered, sweat beading his brow. I relied on police records." "Or you relied on a system that assumes guilt." The judge cut in. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Finally, the judge's gavel struck once. "Case dismissed. Malik Johnson is free." The gallery erupted. Cheers, tears, tears, applause thundered through the courtroom. Reporters rushed for the exits, desperate to break the story first. Angela leaped forward, wrapping Malik in her arms, sobbing into his shoulder. "You're free, baby. You're free." Malik's voice cracked. "I told them, Mom. I told them I didn't do it." "You don't have to tell them anymore," she whispered. They finally listened. Camille approached quietly, eyes wet. Malik turned to her, his voice soft. "You saved me." She shook her head. "No, your mother saved you. You saved yourself. I just finally did the right thing." Angela reached for Camille's hand, squeezing it tightly. "You did more than that. You gave us hope." The judge's gavel struck again, demanding order. But for once, the noise wasn't fear or anger. It was triumph. "Let the record show," the judge said firmly, "that justice, long delayed, has finally arrived." Outside, the courthouse steps became a sea of voices. Protesters cheered. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed like lightning. "Malik, how does it feel to be free?" "Angela, what do you want to say to the community?" "Camille, do you regret exposing your mother?" Malik stood before the microphones, voice steady, though his hands shook. "I want to say one thing," he began. "You can chain my wrists. You can mock my words. You can try to bury my truth. But truth doesn't die." The crowd roared. Angela gripped his shoulder. "That's my boy," she whispered. Camille wiped a tear behind the barricades. Judge Harrington appeared briefly, escorted by security as jeers rained down. Her once commanding presence was reduced to a shadow. swallowed by booze and flashing cameras. For the first time, she had no gavel, no robe, no power. Only silence. That night, news anchors replayed Camille's testimony, Malik's words, and Harrington's fall from grace. Across the city, families who had sat in that same courtroom wept, some for their sons who never came home, some for the justice they'd been denied, some for the hope that maybe, just maybe, things could change. And in one small apartment, Angela knelt beside her son's bed, whispering a prayer of gratitude. Malik, staring at the ceiling, finally felt the chains slip not from his wrists, but from his heart. For the first time in weeks, he breathed freely. Weeks later, the city still buzzed with Malik's case. Judge Harrington's face was plastered on every news channel, not with respect, but with scandal. Investigations piled up. Families came forward, one after another, telling stories of laughter, cruelty, and sentences that destroyed lives. Her resignation letter was read on national television. The woman who once mocked others now trembled under the same spotlight. Malik watched it all from the worn couch of his living room, ankle free of shackles, wrists free of chains. Angela sat beside him, hand on his knee, her Bible resting on her lap. On the screen, a reporter read, "The State Judicial Board has officially disbarred Judge Margaret Harrington for misconduct and bias. Criminal charges remain under review." Angela exhaled slowly. God don't sleep, baby. He don't sleep. The knock at the door startled them. Camille stood there, clutching her notebook. Her eyes carried exhaustion, but also peace. Angela smiled faintly. "Come in, child." Camille stepped inside. Malik stood awkwardly. "I wasn't sure you'd come back. I had to," she said softly. "To see this through." They sat together at the kitchen table. Silence hung heavy, then Angela broke. You stood against your own blood. That couldn't have been easy." Camille's voice cracked. "It wasn't, but silence. Silence was killing me." Malik looked at her. "You changed everything, not just for me, for all of us." She shook her head. "I didn't change the system. I just lit a match." Angela's eyes softened. "Sometimes, a match is all it takes." Later, Malik stepped outside with Camille. The neighborhood was alive again, kids playing basketball on cracked pavement, neighbors nodding, some even clapping when they saw him. One older man shouted, "Keep your head high, son." Malik grinned faintly. For the first time in months, his smile felt real. He turned to Camille. "Do you regret it? Exposing her?" Camille stared at the ground. "She's my mother, but she stopped being my hero a long time ago. If I hadn't spoken, I would have become her shadow." Malik nodded slowly. "Then maybe we both got free." A week later, the community center held a gathering. Families filled the hall, mothers, sons, fathers, daughters, faces etched with struggle but glowing with hope. Angela stood at the podium, Malik at her side, Camille just behind them. Angela's voice rang out. "We came here today not just to celebrate my son's freedom, but to remember those who didn't get this chance. This isn't the end. It's the beginning, because justice isn't a gift, it's a fight." Applause thundered. Malik stepped up, his voice unsteady but strong. "I thought I was alone when they put those chains on me, but I wasn't, and none of us are. They can laugh at us. They can try to silence us. But as long as we keep speaking, keep fighting, they can't win." The hall roared with cheers. Camille's eyes filled with tears. She whispered to herself, "Finally, something true." That night, as the city settled, Malik lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, he wasn't weighed down by fear. Angela peeked in, smiling softly. "Good night, baby." "Good night, Mom." From the living room, Camille's voice drifted in as she spoke quietly with Angela. "I don't know where I belong now. Not with her. Maybe not even here." Angela answered gently. "You belong wherever truth is needed, and truth will always need you." Outside, the streets hummed with life. The courthouse still stood, tall and unbending, but its walls carried new cracks. Cracks made by a boy who refused to bow his head, a mother who refused to be silent, and a daughter who refused to carry her mother's sins. The laughter that once humiliated, now echoed back as shame. And in its place grew something stronger. Hope.